it's a pandemic or there's fallout, the time to prepare is now, not later. Hi, I'm John.
I'm Terry.
And this is Salt Creek Living. Today we're going to talk to you about what you can do in the event of fallout, or it kind of coincides with pandemic too. So we're going to talk to you about preparing for that.
Now, we've all been through a pandemic recently, so that's all fresh in our minds. And a lot of the stuff crosses over from one to the other. So we figured we would just combine the two.
Especially with the concerns we've seen lately with the us and Iran and the talk of World War III going on. We don't want to alarm, anyone, but there's been a lot of people asking questions. So we decided to do this video now. We're not experts. I always figured nothing you can do in a nuclear war, you're going to die. So if you're lucky enough to be outside the blast area and far enough to be outside the immediate radiation, so where you're not going to get the acute radiation, there are some things you can do. And that's what we're going to go over today. So if you've seen some of our other videos, those kind of lead up to...
They're stepping
stones that lead up to this. This is an addition to some of these other videos that we've listed, and as we go throughout, we'll reference those videos. Okay, so the first thing, when you hear of nuclear bomb, before that, if it was me, I would look up the weather patterns. I would look up what they have maps out there for fallout radiation areas. So determine where you're at, and that would determine what preparations you need to take. So if you're fortunate enough to be, say, 75, 100 miles outside of the actual blast zone, you're probably far enough away that you can put some stuff in place and hunker down.
Now, they said that you should prepare for being on your own for
2 weeks.
So this is not our normal, the 72-hour kits that we've talked about. You need to multiply that. So that amount of water,
food, float, everything. You just need to make sure that you have enough for 2 weeks. So you want to food and water for 2 weeks. You also want to make sure, we'll go over the things that are specific for this event. And a pandemic it's very similar, but there's gamma rays are
for radiation.
And those are the ones that people don't think about.
Those are the hardest ones to protect yourself from the research that we did.
Yeah, and it's just like sun rays. They're radiation rays, but the fallout actually will fall down like ash, like a volcano. And so you will actually see the immediate fallout. That's radioactive, but then you have the rays that come in. So you got your gamma rays, and what you would do, we're in our basement right now. That's why it's different from our other videos. Our plan is to stay in the basement. Well, you have doors, you have windows. The cement will block those gamma.
I would say basements naturally are more protection.
But the windows is where they can come through. Doorways, things like that. So what they suggest is getting 6 mil plastic and plasticking up over the windows.
With duct tape.
And good duct tape. Don't get that cheap stuff. This is where you would want to spend the money. You want to have it completely sealed. And then if you're fortunate enough to have, other things to throw over the windows too, no one's going to have time to fill sandbags.
Some suggestions were sandbags, lead blankets, books stacked 1 to 2 feet deep. They even said bricks. That's what I read. It doesn't matter of getting something solid, but again, you may or may not have time for that. Yeah,
and they also said the better the windows, the newer style windows have the thicker glass, double, triple pane. Those will actually help with that too. So, but nothing's going to be 100% perfect. Just stay away from the windows. If you have an area in your basement that is no windows, that's where you'd want to spend the majority of your time.
Where would you go if you had a really bad storm, tornado, that kind of thing? Interior space is the safest. Same with this.
Yeah, in the Midwest, or where they have tornado shelters or regular part of when they build a house or that kind of thing, that's what, stock that up. That's what you want. That's where I would go. Make sure you have enough for 2 weeks. Also make sure sanitation is there for 2 weeks. Typically during a tornado, you're not down there for more than a couple hours. But that would be perfect. But we live in the Rocky Mountains, so we don't have to deal with tornadoes. We looked into lead blankets. They're extremely expensive, not really practical. So our plan is to just plastic the windows and go into an interior room and spend the majority of the time in there. After the first 48 hours is crucial. After that, it drops really dramatically. So if you can stay in and you can only stay in for 2 or 3 days, then you've already done the majority of that.
Well, and that's when the rays aren't going to be any longer. You're just going to be dealing with that fallout, that dust, ash. If you're from the South, it's a lot like the pollen. I mean, it's visible from what I understand.
Yeah, and so what you do is if you have to go out in it, have PPE like you would during the pandemic.
Cover yourself from head to toe.
Head to toe. They suggest like the painters or the installation coveralls that you get. We got one from Home Depot. We were doing that's left over from an insulation project. And
the booties.
They do not have shoe covers, so we have shoe covers that we have left over from work. And you cover yourself, duct tape, rubber gloves, duct tape that up so you don't get anything up in you, any dust up in you.
So if you have gone out and about to get supplies or to do something outside and then you need to come back inside, they recommend having an area set up that you can clean off. So like in our case, we have a walkout basement, we have an exterior door. So what they would recommend is setting up an area outside where you put down plastic or a tarp on the ground, and that is where you strip down your outer layer. So if you have put on PPE, that full outer layer is going to carefully be taken off. You don't want to make all that dust go airborne. You want it to just stay on the clothes and end up on the ground. Then that has to be bagged, and the bag has to be sealed. That is bio-waste. Radioactive bio-waste. Then you can come inside because you've left all of that outerwear outside. And once you get inside, then that's where you're going to take baby wipes or something along those lines, and you are going to wipe yourself completely down. Do not scrub. That will drive it into your skin. You also want to use cold water. If you're not using baby wipes, the nice thing about those is they are disposable, but they are finite. But so you're going to wipe yourself completely down, use hand sanitizer, all of that type of thing. And once you have done that and changed your clothes, so now we're going to change the inner layer into clean clothes, then you can go into your clean area. That all needs to be plastic off, like you see when they do
like in the movies when I do
like
when they're always doing a hazmat or pandemic, or they've got those two. It's almost like an Arctic porch or Arctic entry in a house where you've got your door outside and then you've got you're blocked in between that and the actual inside. So you would want to make an area out of the plastic that is like that.
And that will hopefully protect you and the people that have been inside.
So another thing they tell you to do is, even though you're getting water out, your city water still may be on, there's a good chance that it's probably contaminated somehow. So they recommend a Berkey style gravity fed water filter. And we actually did a video on a homemade version of one a couple weeks ago, and that's it right there.
And that's where we plan on having it.
So it costs us if you buy the buckets, it would cost you about $50. We had the buckets, the kit was $30, and so not super expensive, but it's the same thing as a Berkey.
Now the other thing is that you have to have enough water stored. So for the first 2 weeks, they recommend using the water that you have stored in the house, which that's not going to be contaminated because it was pre-stored and done.
A gallon a day.
Per person.
So that you want 15 gallons per person.
And then once you get past that point, then you can get into your other water stores. Now, like in our situation, we have, if you watched our previous video where we did the 55-gallon drums that we built a rack for, those are actually stored right outside the basement in between this window and the basement door. It's easy access for us. It's under a deck. So in theory, we shouldn't get as much fallout on it if that's the situation.
But also, if we have time, we're planning on throwing a tarp over it and tying it down. So after we can go, when it's time we can go out there, if we still need that, then we can carefully fold up the tarp. The water underneath it should be technically fine. We would still use that filter, but it would be less risky for us. That's our plan. So if we're still alive after the bomb goes
So
off.
you can see how some of these things have been building on each other. Another thing we will need to have is food.
Yeah, they suggest in our previous videos, we really pushed the dehydrated meals because they're lightweight, they're stored forever, and that, they're just, that's the standard. They suggest canned food or MRE food for this situation. So I prefer MREs. I bought a box and it was about $80 for that box, and they're lower now. But one of my sons does construction. He loves these. He takes them for lunch every day.
The other thing that we forgot to point out was that our food storage room is here in the basement. Most of our preps are down here where we plan on bugging in.
Yeah, that's very important. So I want them close to wherever, if they are not in your area, where you're going to be at, you want them close to that area where you don't have to go outside or upstairs if you have a basement. But yeah, MREs are great. They have a lot of calories. They have dessert in them. It's a full meal. And the cool thing is too, is you can take the desserts, or some of them have candy in them. And then if you have little kids, that would be a treat for later on. So you're not getting bored. But that's what they recommend, is like canned food specifically for this, or MREs, because you don't have to cook and they don't use a lot of water.
Now, if you are going to use canned foods, you've got to plan ahead for a way to cook that is safe. If you're staying inside and we've got stuff going on outside, we can't ventilate the stove.
Those little sterno stoves, those little ones they warm up that for the buffets at all the weddings and things, buy a bunch of those cans. They have a little stove. They're super cheap. They're safe indoors. And a lot of people like those, and they don't take a lot of space. You can use them for heating, light, whatever you need to use them for, but they're a great, inexpensive way to have that.
The next is first aid. You're not only going to need your normal trauma stuff, your normal bandage stuff, but you're going to need burn stuff. This kit does have some burn stuff in it.
It does have some burn stuff in it. I would add some more for this specific thing, but this is kind of like a mini EMP kit. It's actually really cool. I was really impressed. We did a video on it a while back. And yeah, we were really impressed with this. If you don't, I would get something like that, but make sure you have more burn things. If you get radiation burn, so those are it's like a chemical burn. So you want to have the stuff for that. But
along with first aid,
definitely this item, potassium iodine. And that's for your thyroid, because that's what's going to process any radiation. You're going to want to take that the whole time you're down there, and probably as long as you can afterwards too.
I think the dosage was 1 for an adult and half for a child.
Yeah.
Something like that. You'll want to look that up prior.
And it's not very expensive. They have expensive stuff. They have cheap stuff. They have little kits that like 10 tablets that you can put in a kit like this, or keep in your car or something like that in a little box. But this was like $10, $12. It wasn't very expensive. 180 tablets, 225 micrograms of iodine, and 99 milligrams of potassium. It should be good enough. One of the things we don't have, and yet we're going to get, but we wanted to get the information out instead of waiting until we had all this stuff, our props or whatever, is the Geiger counters. They're inexpensive. A lot of them are electronic, so make sure it goes in a Faraday bag. So you're going to want a Geiger counter, but you're also
the Geiger counter, they go by different names, but that's the one that you can take a real-time reading.
Yeah, the ones you see in the movies, they're and they're holding out and they're saying, oh yeah, it's safe in here. You're going to want one like that, at least the one. But then
they're like this big now. They're not that big like in the movies.
But you're also going to want to have, they make personal meters. In fact, our son should be wearing one when he's working. Some of his equipment that he has radiation. A lot of people at work in areas that have radiation have these little meters that they clip on their belt, and it tells them, okay, not just how much they've been exposed to, like cumulative. So it's like, it tells you, I don't know if it's bars or percentage or basically how much time you have, but it alerts you before you've been exposed too much. And so if you're out in your yard or you're out in your garage after your 2 weeks are up, you'd wear that around for a while to make sure that you don't stay out too long.
The next thing.
Okay, so we're big on books. In a crisis, you may not always get your digital copies. This is one I bought a few years ago. It's pretty expensive, but it's pretty intensive, and it has anything you can think of. And it's Crisis Preparedness Handbook. And then this is a new one we got, and it's the Navy SEALs Bugging Guide. I did check, this does not have anything with radiation fallout, but it's really good. Yes, it's expensive, but it's worth the money. So you want to have hard copies of your resources that you have. This one is herbal antibiotics. We bought this years ago. And one of the things too is with AI and writing books, there's a lot of books out there that are cheaper products that are written by AI, and they're not always correct. So you want to have some books that are referred to you by other people that know what they're talking about and that are written by real people. And a lot of the books, if it's an old school book, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it's a safe bet that it's probably a good book. The other thing too is when we did our family 72-hour kit, we told you that entertainment was important, because you're going to be, if you're sitting in the room with your family for
2 weeks.
2 weeks
Without electronics.
and you may or may not have electricity. So that means you may or may not have videos. You may or may not have internet. You're going to want actual entertainment. So board games, you can go with your favorite bestsellers, whatever. You're going to want some hard copies. We have a whole tote that is just like old school John Grisham's. And then we have coloring books for the grandkids. We have the whole gambit of entertainment that we keep in our RV when we go camping. Something like this, we do have some in the house, but something like that, we would just basically have something that we have put together like that specifically for something like this in the house.
I'm sure there's a lot more. This is definitely an area that we're still learning.
I haven't, as a prepper, this is something I haven't really thought about, because I just figure if there's a nuclear bomb, you're dead. Not a whole lot you can do. And then, well, if you're outside the fallout zone, so around here, we would be outside the immediate targets, the military targets, the tactical targets. We're probably, as the crow flies, 80 to 180 miles from Dugway. We're over 100 miles from Hill. And then, Hill Air Force Base. Those would be the two tactical targets close to us.
Because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Boeing was a target. And so there was no way. Like if it got hit, we were very first.
So I just never thought of it, because when we grew up, Reagan kind of put a kibosh on the fear of nuclear war with the mutual assured destruction. It's never, ever been a thought in my mind of a nuclear fallout, nuclear war, until recently with Iran, the talk of tactical nukes with Ukraine. And now, they don't even need a nuclear bomb. It could be a dirty bomb. So anything that's radioactive, they set a huge bomb off. You got radioactive stuff inside that bomb. It's called a dirty bomb. So they kind of changed the game. Yeah, so now we kind of have to think about it.
But by talking about it and planning for it, you don't have to fear it.
Preparing is so that you're not in fear. The whole purpose of our channel is not to scare people into preparing. You should have peace through preparedness. So we hope this was some good information for you.
Add in the comments.
Please add things we've missed. Please add things you'd like to see us do videos on in the future. Any projects, anything. Comment what you'd like us to do for our videos, and add in things that we may have overlooked, because we want to learn with you. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.